companies and multiple bonds for the same individual.
So really, we're discussing private companies or public entities mainly. We're not discussing a resident digging in the right of way to throw a lateral in. I mean, how are we?
Well, I don't think a resident would be the one to throw in a lateral. I don't see that.
Sorry, builder.
Well, if a subdivision is constructed correctly and the right-of-way and infrastructure is put in, all of those lots should already have the utilities stubbed to them. And those utilities would have gone in as part of the subdivision construction.
I'm trying to think of something that isn't normal.
Yeah,
So a lot comes in, there's a water line in the road. They come in and say, hey, I don't have a stub, I need to connect to it, and the contractor would be doing that. So are we going to require a franchise agreement with just a typical excavation contractor is my question.
that would probably be too much for an
Right.
individual who
Right.
needs to fix a situation in front of their home.
Right.
I mean, we can keep the current process for that,
Okay.
but those aren't typically the ones that we see. The ones that we're seeing are Dominion Energy, Rocky Mountain Power, Beehive Broadband,
Everybody in the right of way?
and well, there are certain individuals who are contracted by the companies and the secondary water companies to do work, who have their companies in the county. I don't want to name names, but
Again, everybody in our right of way.
yeah, our right of way.
Makes sense.
Well, you know who doesn't, so you can have them come in previous, right?
Yeah, well, even those individuals, we've told them, if you call Brett or John Harrison, you have them come out and look at the issue. If they determine it's an emergency, then you can start work immediately, but you have to complete the application process, but they're not doing that.
How would you determine the amount of the bond?
That's a good question. We'll probably have to do a little bit more research on how to create a rational
So are you
nexus
just
for that.
seeking direction from us so that you can then work on what you want to do in terms of a specific proposal? Is that what?
Yeah, that's correct. Janet has been working on the draft language for the franchise agreement, and an ordinance.
Okay.
Can I make a quick comment on an ad that I've experienced in the past? But if we could add in those franchise agreements, something to the effect of, I know some entities have it in place where if they come in and widen their roadway, and you as a private utility company are in the way, you at your expense you need to move 100% because there's other road entities that do a 50-50 but I've just seen it with public counties that they can say, hey, you guys got to pay for this to be moved so we can widen our road, kind of thing.
100% agree with you. The county should not have to pay to move their infrastructure. They should do that.
Yes, let's have it in there.
So one other item that I'll add to, and Brett will probably roll his eyes when I say this because I bugged him about it enough. We need to have something in there that discusses the requirements for repair when they cut down the side of the road. We have a situation in Croydon where the gas company came in and cut 6 to 18 inches off the edge of the road, came back and cut another foot off and then repaved it. But it's so narrow, when they repaved it by hand, and so it's a washboard now, and it's going to fall off the road. We need to have something that says if you're going to cut into the side of the road, you got to replace to the middle of the road, or something adequate enough that we don't just have edges of the road falling off because they've repaved. I mean, we all know a foot of asphalt is going to do nothing when you drive over it with a truck except break off. So anyway, just something maybe we can include in there. And Brett may have better ideas on how we phrase that, so I'd maybe suggest you work with him as well on that.
That's a good situation where a bond would have helped because we could have already cashed that bond if they had refused to do the work and gone in and done it ourselves. And if it went over, I guess we could try to bill them for the excess. Not that, I don't know if we could collect that.
And also, I think just adding in that the reason that the bond is nice is because that's when, well, if you have the bond in our code, it talks about a warranty period. And so getting the engineer out there, it's not just, they say, hey, we've done it. We would have the engineer out there, and then there's some fees that I think could be put into the statute as well to cover whatever engineering, because not everyone's going to do the same job in replacing the right-of-way. And so that's part of the bond. And if the fee's built into the application, then the engineer can have that review to make sure the warranty period is appropriate, or at least that it's acceptable before the warranty period starts.
Brett, did you have a comment?
So working on these bridges and stuff, I really had to deal with a lot of this franchise agreement and had to deal with one that's 50 years old, and it was tough. It made it tough on me to deal with it. So this is a good idea. And you've got to remember that all these utility companies are a guest in our right-of-way. The residents of Morgan own the right-of-way, and they're all a guest. Everybody's a guest in the right-of-way. So if we widen a road, or I have to put a culvert in, some kind of drainage system, it should be on their dime to move that. It's not, it shouldn't be on the county. So you're correct about that, Commissioner Anderson.
So another question or thought, is there a way that we can encourage utility companies to use non-invasive methods on our roads, like horizontal drilling, rather than cutting the road? I don't know how we would do that. Maybe it's through the bond process. Maybe you get a lower bond if you agree to, use horizontal drilling rather than cutting a hole across to put a gas line in.
Jack and boring is a method that is used both for extending utilities underneath existing roads, freeways, highways. It's a little bit more expensive, obviously, but you don't want to cut a new road. Like Old Highway Road where they overlaid it, you don't want to cut that for several years because it undermines. It's like a rubber band. When you nick a rubber band, it breaks. That's pretty much what the asphalt is. It's like this giant rubber band, and the more sun, it kind of bakes it and hardens it. So not cutting it is important for a certain period of time to protect the integrity of the road.
Well, maybe we need to just include that it cannot be cut for a certain period, and if utility work needs to be done, it'll have to be done via
Jack and
boring.
We can
Anyway,
include
just some
that.
thoughts. Even if the road is old, though, anytime you cut it, you end up,
It's a
we've all
patch.
driven over that speed
Yeah.
bump in the road. So if there's a way that we can encourage, like I said, a non-invasive, approach to it, I think we ought to encourage that, whether that's through a lower bond or an easier process or something that would encourage them to spend a little more money to do it rather than dealing with the county in a different way.
I would agree with you, and that should be in the franchise agreement.
I like it. Any other thoughts, commissioners? Okay. Do you have your marching orders? Do you need anything else from us?
No, we will finalize the franchise agreement. We'll do some research to create the rational nexus for the bond amounts, and then we'll bring it back.
Thank you. Love it.
Thanks.
Okay, Janet. This is Resolution CR 24-77, a final version of the homestead credit application. First, just wanted to thank you for your work on this. I think this is a really important thing that we're discussing here and could really benefit some of the residents of our community. So once this is established, I'd really like us to work to get the news of this out to those who might be able to use it.
Okay, so on the resolution, I fixed my typographical section errors, so that's updated. But there are a couple things I need to point out that we did change in the,
Janet, are these changes since you sent me the packet file?
no.
Okay, thank you.
These are the ones that Penny went through. So I did remove the 6 and 7 of the criteria from the application and from the criteria approval and public notice document. We added the Morgan County logo to make it look nicer. One of the things that had gotten missed that Penny had pointed out is if you look on that homesteader's credit criteria, the first page, where it talks about the requested credit on the bottom, there's 1 and 2, and I had it drafted or. The original intention was and/or, and that's the original amount. I think Penny had come up with. It came to 53,000. So the commission could do, both of those tax credits, or just one of them, or neither. And that was in her, when she spoke to you before, I think. Yeah, the additional 53,394 cost to the county that she had spoke about in the initial proposal had included both of those tax credits together, not the or.
One or the other, okay.
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
Did we ever determine if the household income was supposed to be adjusted gross, or is it just flat income?
Oh, that's a great question. Is that typically done for the,
For most of them, I don't know. I don't know what it is on whatever less than.
And that is definitely a Penny question.
And then
I would assume we would use the same criteria as the circuit breaker uses.
Yes, that's what I
whatever
was
that is.
wondering, and I don't know exactly what that is.
And I can almost guarantee you they're using the same criteria from the circuit breaker because that's what this has been entirely based on. In fact, one of the things that we had removed regarding that they financially support themselves, that was listed as a criteria in the circuit breaker. And basically, apparently, what that means is that no one else can claim you on
Is it
their
dependent?
taxes. Yeah. So.
I would think it would be gross, so you didn't.
Yeah, I would think so too, because if it was
Think
net,
so.
you could probably get to that through a number of,
Right, you could.
of
A good account.
financial maneuverings.
Right. I was just curious if there was any criteria in that or not. And then there was the other question that I sent to you today, Janet. Did we hear back on any of that one?
I did not hear back from Penny, and what Commissioner Fackrell had asked is if someone owned 2 residences, could they still qualify under these criteria? And I would assume that they could,
As long as the second residence isn't an income producing residence.
and that's what I said too. And then in addition, if there's any concerns about it, that's why we drafted it this way, so that the commission can consider other criteria as they determine should be considered.
Should we consider adding, indicating that it's the property owner's gross household income? Is that
Or
something
just
we have
follow
to
the circuit breaker
include there?
rules?
And it does say on the criteria that this is based on the circuit breaker.
Okay. As long as it's listed somewhere, I just
Yeah,
don't want that to become a contentious item because we didn't address it clearly.
right. I agree. So can we approve it tonight, or do we need to make sure and it's certain of anything, or?
I think I would still add gross in there and approve it that way, but that's me personally. And if you
So,
don't feel like that's okay.
I can add the gross to it if you guys want to approve it with the
That
gross
change.
added to it, and then I don't have to keep coming back here to fix my typos.
I think that's a great request.
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution CR-24-77, resolution of the County Commission of Morgan County, Utah approving criteria for the homesteader's credit with the change that the criteria with respect to income be gross income.
Thank you.
Second?
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Before we move on, I'll just, for the benefit of the public, what we just approved is an opportunity for what we're calling homesteaders in the county, which are individuals with, who are 65 years or older, gross income of less than $50,000 a year, and have lived in their home for 25 years or more in the county to receive a reduction of their property tax amount. And the idea behind that is to try to keep those folks who have been here a long time and who have paid into the system for a very long time in their homes. We know that that's an issue and a concern, and we really want people to be able to live here their entire lives. So if you know somebody that fits that criteria, we would love for you to share that with them. We'll try to get the word out as well, but I think that's important for people to know that that's available to them. I know there are some folks who might feel a little bit shy about disclosing their income, but this is one thing that I think is worth doing that for if needed. So if you know somebody that might be in that boat, please spread the word. Okay, let's move on to action item number 7. Leslie, this is discussion, decision, and approval of our amendment of the 2024 Morgan County budget. While Leslie is coming up here, I'll just make mention, starting, did we start this last year where we started doing quarterly? We did. Right? So starting in 2023, and now we've done it through 2024, the county used to do budget amendments once a year at the very end of the year for the previous year. We've started doing this on a quarterly basis, and it's helped us in a great deal of ways. Number one, it helps us with our budgeting because we get to the budgeting time of year, which is now, and we can look and see what our actual expenses have been for the year, as well as revenues. So the reason the budget for 2024 has to be amended is because we will set the budget based on our projections, and then things happen, right? We just witnessed a few of those here where we had a request for paving at a park, right? And we've got to move money around to get it in the right budget to pay for that paving. So that's why we do these budget amendments. In other situations, we might have an increase in revenue come in. Maybe there's a grant that one of our employees worked to obtain. We have to adjust our budget to show that grant in the budget so that we can then expend the funds from that. So that's what we're talking about here. We've got several items where we're, in most cases, increasing one line item and decreasing another to move funds around within our budget to make sure that we don't go over budget in any one category. So with that, Leslie, I'll turn it over to you to talk about the highlights.
Okay. I am here seeking approval of Resolution CR 2479. This resolution will be making a department adjustment for recreation, fund balance adjustments for courthouse building and grounds, human resources, IT, wildland fire, and ambulance, and budgeting for a grant received by the Sheriff's Office for car camera equipment. Do you have any questions about those? Pretty easy this
Commissioner
time.
So you're bringing the revenue for the recreation, is that gonna come from any particular fund to be able to pay for that?
It's moving from one line to another line in her department.
All right, and then to just let everybody know, on the Sheriff's Department, it was a grant that they have received, and that's why we have to do that adjustment.
That's correct. We didn't budget for it when we were doing our budget for 2024.
Okay, so that's an example of what you were just talking about.
Yep.
Good example. Okay, any questions on the budget amendments? Okay. If
Make a motion that
not,
we close the meeting and open the public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public meeting and open the public hearing for purposes of discussing CR 24-79, amending the 2024 Morgan County budget. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We are now in public hearing regarding item number 7. Okay, seeing no public comment, we will look for a motion to close the public hearing and reconvene the public meeting.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are now back in public meeting regarding item number 7. I'm going to look for a motion on CR 24-79.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution CR-24-79, a resolution of the Morgan County Commission adopting certain amendments to the Morgan County 2024 budget.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 8. This is a public hearing, planning and zoning decision. Josh, we'll go to you. Or Jeremy, you're presenting. Awesome.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the County Commission. Action item F8 pertains to application number 24.049. The applicant being Roger Eggett. The location for the request is 667 West Hardscrabble Court. The request for tonight is a rezone from a split designation that is currently on the property between A20 and RR1, that's agriculture and rural residential 1 acre minimum, on a property that comprises of 20.31 acres. And Mr. Chair, the future land use map reflects at least a similar zoning designation between rural and agriculture. The request being to rezone from that split designation to ranch residential 5 and rural residential 5 completely. Staff has done a review of this request and found that it meets our minimum code requirements for accomplishing a rezone, and the request being ranch residential 5 is present on an adjacent property to the east, with many surrounding, or with a lot of the neighbors in the area having between 1 to about 5 acres on a lot of those parcels and lots in the nearby subdivisions. Mr. Chair, the Planning Commission heard this item on their regularly scheduled meeting on September 12th. There was actually an abundance of public comment, most of which could be essentially boiled down to the fact that there are issues with water in this area. That's what the public comments were. The Planning Commission heard those comments and made a recommendation of denial for this item unanimously, 5-0, with 5-0 being the vote and Member Bishop being absent from that meeting, with the finding for their motion basically effectively being based on the public comments during the public hearing anyway, the comments during the hearing, that if such a property were to be rezoned, that water could not serve the property. Staff disagrees with such a claim from both the public and the Planning Commission, for the reason that no such studies have been done to substantiate that claim, that water could not serve X number of lots per subdivision of 5 acre lots in a future subdivision. The bottom line is, for a rezone application, we look at the surrounding properties, we look at it as a case-by-case basis, and we look at the future land use map, and that's effectively the scope of the review. It's if you follow down the line from a rezone, which is a legislative action, down to when that changes, if a rezone were granted, to an administrative process, water is looked at later down the line, starting from a macro level at the concept plan level for a subdivision, and then at the preliminary plat level requiring, and if this were to be a small subdivision, preliminary and final plats would be combined in the same application. Water would need to be verified at that point, Mr. Chair, and not tonight for a rezone application. For this reason, or for these reasons, staff disagrees with the finding from the Planning Commission and recommends approval of this request of this application to the body tonight, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to answer questions. The applicant is in the audience tonight, and I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
Yeah. So I think just first of all, do we, at this point in time, do we need to have the required frontage for, because there's 20 acres, 20.31 acres, they're asking for RR5. I guess, do we care that any of these future lots will have any kind of frontage, or are we taking the same thought process of, well, we're going to address it, we'll look at addressing it later?
That would be addressed later during the subdivision process, because they're required to provide frontage for any lot that they create. if they were to subdivide in the future, they would have to put in a street to meet the frontage requirements. And there's nothing that prohibits them from putting that in.
Well, sorry. Nothing that prohibits them from putting what in?
A street?
Yeah, I guess the concerns I'd have, we discussed it and I'll just mention it, but if we are putting a street in, it depends on geographically and, you know, how that would work and how that would look. And I don't think any of us know how that'll work yet or if it'll work, but my guess would be they'd figure out a way. So,
Yep, that's true.
From a water perspective, I don't know about the other commissioners. I'm pretty sure we've all kind of looked and read at the notes. And from my perspective, I think that no matter where we put development in, there's a potential for wells to disturb adjacent wells. I've seen water issues where wells have been drilled 1,000 feet deep until they found water. So can you spend a lot of money just to drill a deep well? Well, sure you can. And then I've also seen in that same scenario a nearby ski resort, not in our county, but they also had two experts, 30-year experts, water experts, and they were both completely on different pages, 180 degrees. So you can have an expert say, this is going to have an effect on all these wells, and here's a great effect on the water. You can have another expert that's going to say, it's not going to affect any of the wells, and who knows where the truth lies. But what we do know is there is a struggle for water, and I hear you that it'll be addressed later. I definitely think we need to, knowingly what issues we think could be concerns, we definitely got to bring them up. I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing to do.
Not only
I
would
just,
it
I'm quite confident any resident that lives in this area could come up and let us know the issues they've had. But anyway, those are my initial comments.
not only would it be approved later on, it would be approved by the applicable water authority. The Weber Basin regarding water shares, the Weber Morgan Health regarding digging of a well, and ultimately supervised by the Division of Drinking Water, and none of those three entities being the county or planning staff.
Is the intention for access to any future lots to be through this hardscrabble court drive?
For a rezone, the applicant is not required to give us any information on what they're going to do with the property. I will say that a private lane can serve up to 4 lots. There's currently 2 being served by Hardscrabble Court.
I understand that. I'll bring this up because it's public information. Hardscrabble Court is privately owned by a now defunct entity and has not paid its taxes in many years. So that's a concern to me that I don't know who actually owns it. It's under a construction company name and taxes haven't been paid in a very long time. So.
Is that limited just to the court?
Correct.
Right away?
Yep, it's just the court right away. So I don't know how that affects.
I wonder why it hasn't come up for tax.
It probably should have. Because it's been,
Public right of way, I guess.
Leslie, how many years since they paid their taxes? And the taxes are not much. We're talking $20, $30 a year. But I think it's been over a decade since taxes have been paid on that road. So.
Is there any kind of, you may not know the answer to this, is there any kind of maintenance agreement or anything recorded with respect to that?
I have no idea. Do you have any idea?
I would ask that the applicant address that.
Okay.
May I ask a question before that, though?
Yeah.
It says here, in response to the concerns, the staff conducted a site inspection and observed several well-maintained green lawns throughout this area. And then you're talking about the water usage per 1 acre of grass. That is all done by sprinkler secondary water. How come we're including that in drinking water information?
First of all, the water out there is, if it is a concern, it's just a good comparison of how much water it actually takes to water a lawn.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Sorry. Any other questions for staff? Okay, if not, we'll hear from the applicant.
Hi, I'm Roger Eggett. This is my wife Jamie. We are the owners of the property. I do have a little bit of information for you. As the staff noted, that we're not asking for a subdivision at this time. We're asking for a rezoning. There's quite a bit of difference between the two and the requirements of the two. We've spent the last 14 months with the county going through a subdivision process. It took that long mostly because of our part, but we spent 14 months.
You're talking in a different location, correct?
In Porterville, where we are moving to build a home in Porterville. And the reason that we'd like to get this rezoned, like many of the people here, we would like to have the opportunity to bring our children here. I'm not from Morgan, but I got here as quickly as I found out about it. My wife, on the other hand, her great-grandparents are Stoddards. They settled this area. Her grandparents were born and raised here. They are buried here. Her family has a long history here. And we would like the opportunity, if possible, to examine or pursue possibly subdividing to get another lot or two to allow our children to build on this property. When we went through that process with the subdivision, we met with lots of people. We met with our surveyors, we met with our engineers, we met with geological engineers. We had to get a water right from the state of Utah. We had to get a contract from the Weber Basin District. We worked extensively with the health department. The health department came out and verified that we had flowing water. Then they tested the quality of that water. So that was all done during that subdivision process. And if we pursue a subdivision on this, we will be subject to those things at that time. In the rezoning, as the staff mentioned, we looked up the rules for rezoning. And lot size, is it conducive to the neighborhood? And so we did a little bit of research on Hardscrabble. There are just over 40 addresses on Hardscrabble. 13 of those lots on Hardscrabble are 1 acre or less. 5 of those are less than 2 acres. 3 of those are less than 4 acres. 9 of those lots are less than 5 to 6 acres. So a total of 30 of the 43 addresses on Hardscrabble have 5 or less, the same rezoning or the same zoning as we're requesting, or 70% of our neighbors already have this zoning. The second issue is utilities. We ran natural gas into our property. We have natural gas. We don't use propane. We're connected to the grid, so we already have power and water. The health department has already looked at our property, and it's conducive to maintaining a leach field and a septic system. I know the issue is water, and I understand many of these people here are here to talk about water. I want to just go over a few things. The Authority on Water in the state of Utah is I'm having a brain freeze. The Utah Geological Survey. They have done a 100-page report on water in the Valley of Morgan. If you haven't read it, it's accessible from their website, the Utah Geological Society. They've produced a map of water for the Morgan Valley. They've studied water throughout the entire state. That's their mandate. Water is in aquifers below our ground. There is a aquifer below Morgan Valley, and they've named it aptly Morgan Valley, the Morgan Valley Aquifer. My water on that lot is tapped into the Morgan Valley Aquifer. You can see that the Morgan Valley Aquifer comes barely up Hardscrabble. If you look at the map, it barely comes up Hardscrabble. The water I take from my well is the same water that's taken from the aquifer for this building, for the fourplex down the street, for the businesses in town. The aquifer starts right at Mountain Green. It goes up to just below East Canyon. There's an extension that does go up Hardscrabble, and it goes up just past Weber Canyon here, just past Morgan. The key is tying into that aquifer. So the Utah Geological Survey stated there's 2 sources of water. Either you tap into an aquifer or you develop a well that's already tapped into that aquifer. In my business, I've developed 2 water systems. I own a business up in the Uintas. I have a well there that I drilled 30 years ago that produces almost identical to the well on this piece of property. We've developed a water system that provides for 18 cabins, a store, a restaurant, a swimming pool, and 2 hot tubs off that one well that produces the same amount of water as this well. Do I need to have people keep talking?
Yeah, if you can please just keep your comments till the public hearing, that'd be great.
Thank you. The key is that if we were to add a lot or 2 here, we could tie into our well and we could develop a water system. The key is with my neighbors who don't have water. Let me tell you some of the things. The state of Utah, and this is all online. The Mikesels. Lance and Cindy Mikesel dug their well 192 feet. They did not tap into the aquifer. Chris Mikesel does not have a water right with the state of Utah. He spoke at the meeting against us. Daryl Mikesel, 122 feet. Stan Mikesel, 158 feet. Arnold Mikesel, 245 feet. Cindy and Kent Carter, 200 feet. My well's drilled 333 feet and it tapped into the aquifer. If our neighbors don't have water, we have an opportunity as a neighborhood. Let's develop a water system for them. It's done in many parts of this valley. There are little mini water systems. In a matter of months, we could develop a water system for those people on Hardscrabble who don't have water. We could tap into the aquifer, we could put in storage tanks, we could put in distribution systems. I've done it. I've done it for a property of 10 cabins, and those cabins aren't all together. We could help those here who need water. It could be done. I just saw you approve hundreds of thousands of dollars for other things. We could raise our own money. We could help our neighborhood and help our neighbors have water. To answer your question about the maintenance agreement, that piece of property that has defunct taxes, you're right, it should go to tax sale. But on our plat for our property, it states, and this is recorded with the county and it was approved by the county, Hardscrabble Court is designed to provide a road right-of-way with width and construction designed to meet the minimum county standards as established for roads serving this development for residential use. Morgan County has approved this development with the condition that maintenance, repair, replacement, and snow removal for the road with this development and the administration of such is equally the responsibility of the owners of these lots. My neighbor here and I share that easement. We are jointly responsible for maintaining that road. We're not responsible for its taxes, but as you mentioned, I looked those up, it was $270, I think, but we'd be happy to help with that as well. That's my pitch. I appreciate your time. I know I'm nervous, my voice is shaking, but I have had a major heart attack. So long as I keep standing, I'll be okay.
Questions for the applicant?
The well that you mentioned, what's its production rate per minute?
I think we are 6 to 10 gallons a minute.
Thank you.
Our pump is in that range.
Additional questions, commissioners? The applicant? You did mention a water system. I'll just make mention that the county does not currently own or operate any water infrastructure at all. We've kept out of the water business on purpose, so all the water systems in the county are privately held.
But we could do that as a...
Yes, you could as a private company, absolutely, yeah.
And we probably should look at
I'm just making the point that the county would not necessarily be participating in creating a water system.
Well, there might be state grants or federal grants, or we pool our resources and get these guys water.
Sure.
Because water's there if you tap into the aquifer. And the report done by the Utah Geological Society is an outstanding report. So.
Perfect, thank you. All right. With that, we will look for a motion to adjourn the public meeting and convene a public hearing regarding item number 8.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We are now in public hearing. I'll just ask you, if you do come forward, please state your name for the record. We'd ask you to please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, if you can. And please, let's keep it civil. Thank you.
Cindy Carter, Arch Gravel. And we just got some new pavement at the top of the road there. I think I thank you guys for that. First, I would like to correct Mr. Eggett. I'm not real sure where he's getting his information, but Kent and Cindy Carter's well is 820 feet deep. Kent and Cindy Carter are also licensed well drillers, even though that's not what we do for a living. We drill cathodic wells. We have to have a license to do those, just like a water well. And just like Jared brought up, you can drill a hole right here and go 10 feet over in something different. They can look at those aquifers, but you being able to get to them, the depth of them from where you're at, there's no guarantee right now in the way the process is. I would like you to know that we also have a well, a spring. Kent and I own what the family calls the Red Hill Spring, that happens to be one of the oldest recorded water rights in the state. And we're kind of proud of that. That Red Hill Spring has run Kent's lifetime and Kent's father's lifetime always. Rigby Construction, who built this subdivision, drilled that well in 2007, and in 2008, in November, our Red Hill Spring stopped running. And it has done ever since that happened. Even last year, when we had a great water year, it still stopped in November. A few years in the bad drought, it has stopped in July. And one year, I believe 5 or 6 years ago, it didn't run at all. We have a big holding tank that we store water in, and it's just Kent and I there. And so we can usually make our water go, but we did drill a well because we have the ability to do so, just to make up for those problems. So we do have recorded issues with this subdivision being down here. And I don't know if you guys understand that, but what we would have to do is go to the state and basically sue them. And I don't want to have to do that. But that is an option, because we do have some very good recorded findings and proof of what's happened up there. I would also like to point out that on his map, you're showing, or Josh and them are showing, that there's 5 acres adjacent, and it's adjacent to that road that nobody's paid taxes on, but the largest portion of his property is adjacent to me, and the other largest portion is adjacent to Hanson's, and those are both zoned A20. And I just don't think it's really wise for the county to start issuing blanket rezones because they have to come in and do a subdivision, and it'll probably get denied then. It's still going to be zoned as RR5, and them using the reason because a neighbor is zoned that, then we might as well just zone everything high density. Go all the way down to Mountain Green and move it all up this way because that's how the neighbor is. He's also, when you're talking, I know you guys said something about secondary water, but Roger Eggett is not allowed to use the West Porterville ditch on a big portion of his property. The rules of that ditch is that you are not allowed to water above the old ditch, and a bunch of this property is. That I can show you on that map too where that is, if you would like to see that. I'm also a little bit concerned, and I don't know if there's any kind of regulations, but Wilkinson's have an airport there now that is now a registered FAA airport that I know Eggett's have complained about because they take right off, the runway is right over this piece of property. And I don't know if that needs to be considered when you're rezoning. Obviously, we see Ogden fighting all these problems of having an airport there with all the density around the airport. So I just ask that that's looked at, and then again, the road is a concern. And I believe that's all I have. And I would like to also thank you guys for the homestead thing. My little 92-year-old mother-in-law, Ludine, that has been here her whole entire life will definitely benefit from that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Hansen. I'm just to the north of the Agates. It's a great idea to split up the property like that, and I don't really care for as long as it's his property, but in some ways I have three concerns. 4 years ago, my daughter-in-law, she came to the county wanting to build a house and was totally discouraged to even apply because it would never happen. Now they moved somewhere else, and I'm very sorry about that. That's one concern. Second concern is the road. It's in a very deplorable state, and we haven't discussed how to keep it up. We don't know who, or so far, what to do, who owns it, who to approach this problem, because it is a problem. It's not maintained. It's in a terrible state. I have good waters, just maybe 25, 30 yards from Agates property. Comparatively, I've good water, but I've run dry as well. And I have some good neighbors coming up to my well asking for water, which of course I give them because as far as I know, I haven't, it takes August, September before mine runs dry. But it is a concern. I don't know how it's going to be solved, but this is going to affect me. And then it's not only a question for Agates anymore, it's a question for me too. Same thing with a road. I don't know what to do about it. We can't do anything of this kind before we have settled the use of the road. So, as I said, I'm sure he's entitled to split up his lot the way he wants. I moved up there 15 years ago because of the fact that it was not divided into lots. And I enjoyed the view, I enjoyed living there. But again, that is, he's entitled to care about his own property. I have these three concerns. My son and daughter-in-law, they and their family, they could have lived up there now, but they were totally discouraged from even applying or starting this because it would never happen. And I'm sorry about that. We have the road and we have the lack of water. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Stan Mike, so I live just across from the Agates on the other side of the road where the water's a little bit more, less gallons a minute. We survive on it. My concern is, I apologize because I wasn't at the meeting before, so I really didn't know what was going on, but I'd talked to Roger and he told me he'd like to have his family up there, and who wouldn't want their family close to him? But my only concern with that area is the houses that were built on the hill over there, because Goldfleck owned that property. Those that can remember, it's as old as I am, but they had that property over there, and they tried to put a subdivision in several times. Delmer White told me several times he owned that ground right in there by them, that's a it was a floodplain. And if anybody's ever been up there, and you guys probably got a taste of it this year down Hartsgravel Road since they put the pipeline in, and the ditch isn't there no more to catch a lot of that water. Probably 80–90% of that water comes out of that draw right there. So my concern is there enough higher ground for them to put 3 houses or whatever there close by them? But if you want them close by you, I don't understand buying some more property somewhere else with a lot of acres and having your house up there and having your kids clear over here. But just my concern is if they've looked at that for a floodplain down through.
Thank you.
I'm Sid Meitzel. I'll say it's Sydney, but most of you know Sydney, so I go by Sid. I noticed my well wasn't brought up. Sorry, I'm nervous. I've never spoke like this.
Nothing to be nervous about.
For a 280. I get 3 gallons a minute, and I raised my family there, and I pick, I'm gonna do laundry, do dishes, we go drive. This subdivision was built way before some of those other houses. It was approved, and if anything shows us why it shouldn't have been, or the lack of water we have. Yeah, we're 1 acre, 3 acre, 4 acre. There's no water. So that's already been approved, it's done, it's over, but that should be an example of why we shouldn't keep putting stuff out there. Because no one should have to say, oh, I'm headed to the laundromat today because I don't have any water to do my laundry. No one should have to say, do you use your dishwasher? No, because I put this much water in my sink and I wash them, and as I rinse them, I can fill the sink more. We have watched our water go down. And if you go up and look at my front yard, it's not grass, it's rock. Because we could never grow any grass, because we have those shares in the secondary. But you know what happens? We're at the top. So think about what happens on those dry years. We don't even get any water from the secondary. So I don't get water from my secondary, I don't get water from my well. So why would we put more up there? That's what I don't understand. We already know there are issues. And I understand it's your property and you want to do stuff with it, but I want my kids to live in Morgan too. And I've watched my property taxes go from minimal to these great big huge homes being built up there. And you know what? My kids aren't going to be able to live up there. My kids aren't going to be able to live in Morgan. And the Mikesons have been in this county for how many years? So it would be great if we all had the money that we could keep by ground and all of our kids could live up here and we could all join in on this one big well and pay a person so we could use their water. But it's not feasible for all of us. So I just want you to know that I have struggled. I have lived there for 23 years and struggled and raised a family on the bare minimum of water. And the thought of more going up there and somebody hitting that well again terrifies me. And yes, I do have a house going in next to me right now. But the lot's been approved for 30, 40 years. She can't even get water on her own property. She's on a family member's property. We can try and find water. She had to bring special stuff. So I just ask that you take that into consideration, that my well was not considered at 280 and 3 gallons a minute. So I think that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
My name's Arnold Mikesel. I live up on Hartsgravel Road too. I was born and raised in Hartsgravel. Grew up with limited water. Didn't have hardly a lot of water. When I was a kid, I didn't even think I'd be moving up there and trying to drill my own well. It's a big gamble, obviously. It's a crapshoot to hit water. So there's been a few of us up here that's been packing water, and I cross my fingers every time my well turns on that it's going to pump up and give us water. My cousin tried to drill a well, didn't hit. Spent about $20,000 to $30,000 on a dry hole. Just not a lot of water up there. But if you was to pass this, there's many people on Hartscrabble Road that has big enough property to subdivide theirs too into 1 acre lots or whatever. You got the Fairbanks, the Beckers, Greens, Robinsons, Stevens, Burwells, Carters, Martins, Allens, Hanks, Brashears, the Mikesels, Hansons, Flickingers, Eberleys, Wilkinsons, Sidwell, and it just goes on and on and on. So if we go ahead and approve this, then what's going to stop all these people to do the same thing? And they're going to have the same crapshoot of hitting water between 200 to 900 feet. 900 feet, that's a lot of money. One of our neighbors already just done it. And he put a lot of money into a well. So if you could, just consider that. It'd be nice to have a water coming from wherever, if you're gonna put a big tank and share it with everybody. But when they subdivide for all these people, even if you have one of them, you ain't gonna have enough water. So I just thought maybe you could think about that. Thank you.
Randy Elliott. I'm a part-time resident. I'll be a full-time resident come January 6th, Insurrection Day. I give up my full-time job on the other side of the mountain. But speaking of, of properties and zoning, and I'm going to speak against staff here for a little bit. Sometimes commissioners have to take a hard stance and say, staff, just because it's zoned that way next to you doesn't mean that it has to be that way going forward. In Davis County, where I'm happen to be a county commissioner, when I first took office, we had a family come to us and said, we want to develop this for a family out in an unincorporated area, and so we allowed it, 1 or 2 acres, lot subdivisions, couple acre lots. And they came to us and said, we want to put a 40-acre lot subdivision in. And it just expanded. And we said no, because we didn't know what the repercussions would be. So we changed our zoning in Davis County unincorporated from A1, A5 to A10 so that we could do a study on septic systems. We found that in Davis County unincorporated area that one septic system can be handled on 10 acres after doing an extensive study of 4 years of doing all the tests. You can go up there and perk and all do what you want and say that, oh, it perks, it can handle septic system. But I would recommend the county go out and do a real study and say, okay, what can this actually handle? What is Morgan County actually can handle per acre for septic? The second thing is, the house that I purchased, we're on our second well. The first well did dry up at 200 feet. They're now down to 400 plus feet and getting some water, and we had to put a cistern in to be able to collect that water. And so my word of caution is to the county is that as you're growing up, you're gonna have to make those hard decisions and say, look, we gotta look forward to the future. If we're gonna grow up, we're gonna have to put sewer systems in, we're gonna have to put water systems in, and to say, well, the neighbor's got this lot or that lot, and you keep allowing them, it just keeps expanding. That's my word. I think I kept it 3 minutes. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Randy.
I'm Cindy McKee, and I live on Hartscrabble as well, just east of the Eggets. I've never met them, but I'm not meaning to beat a dead horse, but I live in a 116-year-old house that's crumbling and falling apart, and I don't have the luxury of being able to move to someplace else, fixed income, to even repair my home to livable standards, basically. Don't send anybody to check my house. I don't want to be kicked out of my house. I can't afford it, but I have to stay put. But my pump's still running, or my well's still pumping, and thank God it is. But if something were to happen, if more houses are built and the water's taken away and it stops, I don't have the option. I don't have the luxury of moving. And I would just think that I was raised to consider my neighbors, to consider other people and how they live and help them if I can. And it just, I guess, I just feel it's kind of, the complacency is reprehensible, that there's no complacency or consideration for the people that are already there. He gets to move on and leave us behind to struggle. And anyway, that's what I'm saying. And then the homesteading thing, yes, thank you. I run the food pantry. I've seen a lot of elderly people come in, and it's really humbling for them. And this will be an ease, I hope, that they won't have to struggle so much anymore. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Separate note on the homestead item. If you'll come over and visit with our clerk's office, they can give you some more information on that. Maybe you could help hand that out to some of the folks you think could use it. Okay, any other comment?
Hello, Richard Meixel. I live across the street from Higgins.
And I'm Vicky Meixel.
I grew up there my whole life. I did move down to the city for a little while, but I just moved back up to my grandparents' house. And the well's not good there. And we just actually put a 160-gallon tank downstairs, and we have to take showers like trailers. We have to turn it on and off. And we have to watch what we use, laundry. Sometimes we have to go to the laundromat as well. And yeah, if we're struggling now, and $50,000 for another well, that's a lot of money. And I don't know if you can pull that map back up, but those other houses, they're on those 5 acres. If you happen to drive up there, they're actually up on the hill, and that is kind of a flood zone. I do have a video of all the water coming up out of there. So somebody who builds there, it's, I don't know. I think the Agates did have a flood in their basement, so that would be something to think about for the future if there is more homes. Spend a lot of money like that, and you have your basement flooding all the time because you built into a flood zone and didn't know it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Meixel. As my wife alluded to earlier, we've got well problems. I just want to add to what she said. For 20 some odd years that we've had that well there, it has produced less and less and less with every well that's gone in. When my cousin Arnold did next to us and did his well, I produced less. The list goes on and on. When we first moved in there, we didn't haul water. Every year we've hauled more. 3 years ago, I was hauling water 2 times a year. The last 3 years, 2 years, I haul water 4 times a year. I have a 1,000-gallon tank that I fill up. I guarantee you, are more conservative with our water than anybody else around. I guarantee you that. And it's empty 4 times a year. Another well, another 2-3 wells over there. I don't know what it's going to do. My sister, who is trying to get a house built next to us right now, she just drilled 300 and I think it was 70 feet. Nothing. Moving, starting another well. No guarantees. Whatever his ideas are with this depth that you're going to hit water is out of this world. There's no truth to that whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alan Flateau. I moved up to Morgan 4 years ago. And like I said last time, I do due diligence, because I've never bought a house where it didn't have water. And I got a nice house. It was kind of just acres. Up on the hill, it was a preacher's house, and he didn't do a real good disclosure on water. And as far as conservative, I get maybe 100 gallons a day. So I do have a big system. And nobody's more conservative on water than me. And going back to due diligence, I don't know when they named hardscrabble. Hardscrabble means being or relating to a place of barren or barely arable soil. Somebody knew it way back when. And my well is 850 feet deep. I'm not going to build another one to get to 0. So, and I'm one of the people that can't be on the right side of the canal, so I get no irrigation water because I'm on the wrong side of the road. So everything I did about buying that house, other than moving to Morgan, South Morgan, it's ungodly beautiful, but it's a hard living. Spend that much money for a house that should be demolished, honestly. So thanks.
Okay, seeing no additional comment? Okay.
Aaron Vance. I live up Hartsgrove also.
Sorry, what was the last name? Can you spell it? Vens. No, it's that one.
Anyway, I do live up Hartsgrove. As far as the zoning's been there for a long time. And that's the reason why the houses had the frontage and why they're zoned 1 acre, 5 acre, whatever the case may be. And there's a reason they zoned it, right? They didn't zone it just because it was convenient. They zoned it because it's what the valley could handle, what the properties could handle up in that area. With the infrastructure, we have none, right? We're lucky we got gas up there, which was great. We'll never see sewer in my life. We'll never see culinary water, or none of that stuff. I do have a green lawn, I'm sorry, but and a garden. But I do have water. And I'm,
Nice garden.
Thank you. And I'm very fortunate, right? These guys here, I see hauling the water, and I know what time of year it is. And yeah, we all have sympathy for them. We can't go on doing what we're doing if we keep developing in places we should not develop. And that's kind of, you know, we all heard the water stories, and we don't have to go on about that. But it was zoned for a reason, and it's not made to take lightly or rezone just because you want to have somebody else move in there. We all understand that's not always the case. We might have to go somewhere else. So anyway, I'd ask you to look at the zoning. Why change it now? There's no infrastructure, so you support the idea. And as far as, you know, 1,000-foot wells, I'm sorry, there's not a lot of people can afford 1,000-foot wells in the area you live in now. If you want to chase all those people out of there that can't afford a well, then that's what would happen. Mike's would be moving. If I dried up, I can't afford a 1,000-foot well. And nor do I want to pay somebody else to put a tank up there, fill it full of water, so I can drink it because they wanted more housing. We want to develop more. Don't want to see that. Barkley Earl lives around the corner, and they have a community well, and it dries up also. So the community well is not always the answer. And again, it's a burden on everybody. That's it.
Thank you.
Lance Mikesel. Aaron kind of beat me to the punch. I don't want to beat the dead horse of water. We've heard plenty of that, but I would just echo Aaron's thoughts of, right, this zoning was set at some point by a county commission before and by a planning committee, that this is what the area should hold. Some of these right areas in our county don't need to be developed and have high density, don't need to be even 5 acres, right? I think as we talk about and go along all the lots down there, I think most all of the lots have frontage, right? I'm sitting here on a 1 acre lot objecting to somebody having 5 acres, but I have the frontage. And that, when that was, our property was subdivided, it was because all the property had frontage. I believe if you go on down the road, those 5 acre lots, I would guess probably all have frontage. So like others have said, we start allowing these that are zoned A20 to start splitting up, right? That's a whole bunch of houses up Hartsgravel. There's some up there that, some neighbors up there that they come in. I don't know that I could come in and object because I could look and say, oh, they've got their frontage, right? I don't know that I can object to that, but when we start getting to all the properties that don't have frontage and we start allowing them to develop, just because something is sitting next to it, is going to continue to get us further and further down the road of way too many houses, way too many people, and not the infrastructure or the ability to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, going once, twice. Okay, all right. Seeing no additional public comment, we'll look for a motion to adjourn the public hearing and reconvene the public meeting.
I'll make that motion.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We are now back in public meeting, and we are on item number 8, discussion decision, rezone application. Okay, commissioners, any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just know the problem.
Well, I got a question. Do you care, Commissioner Fackrell, if I go?
I'm done.
I guess in the experience I've had, my understanding also as an entity is that we're supposed to, I don't know if ensure is the right word, I gotta be careful legally, that water and sewer, the two basic needs, are available. And I know that they go through different entities. There might be culinary water systems or districts or Weber Basin or Weber Morgan Health Department, but we still have, I believe, the responsibility to at least say, yes, that we're aware of, there's availability of water and sewer. And I don't know of any other place like this in the county. I have read the report, and it is a very good report, and there's a lot of water in the valley. I don't know of any other location in the county that's like Hardscrabble. I mean, it's not even, we can't even, it's not, we're comparing apples and oranges to any other that I've seen anyways. So I don't know how in my right mind and conscience I can say, I think the water will be fine, man. I mean, I could go off. I could say, okay, sure, drill a well 800 feet. You need to look at every single well in the neighborhood. You got to be monitoring that for the next 3 years and see if it has an effect on it while you're pulling well. I mean, there's so many different variables. And I guess it's changing into a comment. I appreciate the comment that Cindy made. It took a half a second to pull up the wells in the area. It's just Utah, state of Utah wells, and Cindy's wells at 820. So let's just make sure, well, the smaller size radius well goes all the way down to 820. The bigger size 9 7/8 is 200. So, but we just got to be correct in how we're explaining things. That helps. But anyways, I guess I'm looking at you, Garrett, and I don't know if you know the answer, but I guess I have a huge concern that we're knowing the issues that exist like this and not, I don't know. I feel like I'm just concerned, very concerned. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
I do, and Josh can correct me if I'm wrong because he reads the code, the subdivision code very thoroughly. But as far as the subdivision process, although the Division of Drinking Water regulates the water systems, the county requires will serve letters. And so there is some checking that is done by the county. We also defer to Weber Morgan Health Department for the septic analysis. But it's still required by our code to have that happen. And I think that it's probably a good thing to just remember that for a legislative decision, although you can't require applicants to answer your questions, I think when you ask those questions, it's giving you more information to inform your decision. And so I'm not going to say don't ask questions. I think you can ask those questions, and then if they don't want to answer, you can respectfully move on. If they do answer, that may inform how you decide. But for the legislative process, you have that ability to take all the comments in. It is not similar to the administrative where you check the boxes, and if they check the boxes, you have to approve. You have the ability to listen to public comment. I mean, you can listen on administrative items, but it shouldn't sway you away from approving something that does check the boxes. So I think that distinction is good to remember.
I think, Commissioner Anderson, you hit the nail on the head as far as my thoughts on this. And Mr. Smith made a good comment that I think is of concern to me. You know, we could say, well, water's going to be discussed at a later point when they get to the subdivision process and not worry about it now. And that's fine, except for the fact that it is administrative in nature when they get to the subdivision process, and I'm concerned that, who's to say that the due diligence will be done at that point, so that's my
Although
concern
you're
at this
not
point.
required to look at water at this
Correct.
point, you're not prohibited from considering it at this
Correct.
point. That's the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our planning commission heard all this, and they're more experts on land use than we are. If they had a negative recommendation to us as a legislative board, why would we go against it?
I'm not saying we should go against it in this situation, so don't get me wrong.
Okay.
But there have been situations where we have maybe taken a different approach than the Planning Commission. And in this case, we have two different recommendations. We have a recommendation from staff that we should approve and a recommendation from the Planning Commission that we shouldn't. In the past, we've had the same type of thing, and I think we've made those decisions to the best of our ability. Sometimes legislative decisions come down to more than just expert in land use too. You know, sometimes there's other factors that I think we need to consider. So I don't know if that answered your thought.
That's good.
And I don't know if that question was even directed to us
No,
or not, but
it was just directed towards you guys. I know, Mike, you've been on the Planning Commission before, and so you know the code's a lot more. I know staff has recommended it. Planning Commission didn't. Sure, they're newer, but I know in the past we have gone and did against the Planning Commission, and the repercussions that came are not always good. And not saying I'm afraid, because I'm not. I do know the water situation up in Porterville. I am one of the lucky people. I only had to go down 70 feet, but then I had to go 118 to get my water, and I've got 45 gallons a minute. So I'm one of the lucky people. But my dad has 1 gallon a minute. And I understand where you guys are coming from. I've got neighbors on the Highway 66 side that they had to go back in and drill a new well to be able to get water. I had another neighbor that had to go over 600 feet to get his. And then when he did get it, it's just like mine, where you've got iron in it. So if you want to wash your clothes in iron, I can tell you what they turn out to be like. It's brown. And so it's not fun. So we have to come down to Morgan here to get the good water down here and wash our whites. So I'm just saying that I know the problem, and it's not fun. And I don't want to have a water system up in Porterville, because then that enhances infrastructure. I mean, this is just personally, not as your commissioner, but personally, I would like to not have, I don't want to have an infrastructure of water up there, a water system up there, just because I don't think the people in that area want more growth. Even though they want their kids to come back, they want their kids to come back, they want them to live right next to us, we still have the water problem. And, I mean, we had passed a code a while ago that had to talk about, it was about detached accessory dwelling units. If you're wanting something for your kids, then put in a detached accessory dwelling unit, so that way we can end up having your kids there. And that only takes up one, but we'll have to work on another one later. So anyway, that's just my thoughts.
Commissioner Fackrell, I'm glad that you brought up the recommendations of either staff or Planning Commission. I just think we should point out that regardless of which direction the commission goes, I don't think that means that we don't trust the judgment of either entity, either group. I think both are doing their best to do their job, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that staff is trying their hardest to help our residents accomplish what they want to do with their property. I think that's commendable. We've had in the past staff that doesn't try to do that, and I think that's not a good thing. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate the Planning Commission trying to, do their best to navigate a tough situation. So anyway, I just wanted to make the point that regardless of how the commission votes, I think we still have full trust and respect for our staff and our Planning Commission.
That is correct.
Commissioners, any other thoughts, comments?
No, I have a comment that I think that it's also our responsibility to protect our citizens. That's one of our responsibilities as a commission, is to protect those citizens and the things that they need, and we need to look at all those things. So.
sometimes it's not a fun line to walk.
Nope.
Okay. With that, I'll look for a motion then if there are no more comments.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If an applicant were to drill a well, your relative production level is low from my experience. Frankly, so's yours.
Yeah, I know it is.
Ours are typically, I'm looking at wells that are serving public systems, and so they have much higher gallons per minute. And, you know, I grew up in the desert of southern Nevada. We lived on a well, and even there, I don't think we ever ran dry. And, but if an applicant were to come in and say, we've drilled a well and we have a high producing well, is that going to make the difference for purposes of a zoning application? I know it certainly would in terms of an application for subdivision, because they would be able to, in fact, check the box. They would have a well that produced sufficient water supply for that subdivision. And, you know, I think I'm surprised about the lack of water in that area, but that's just because I was uninformed with respect to it before, and I think it is a legitimate concern. But it's like Cindy Carter pointed out, you can drill a well and hit pay dirt or pay water, or you can move over 10 feet and miss. And I've not seen it that close, but I've certainly seen it within the distance that I used to be able to throw a baseball, where one drill well is, you know, pumping at 600 gallons per minute, and the other well, you know, they got like 13 gallons per minute. And so, you know, and that's a baseball throw. So, I mean, I'm kind of persuaded that there is a significant problem here, and it's probably advisable to work on the solution to the problem before we advance rezones that will make it more difficult. But if somebody were willing to work on the problem and came up with a solution, then I would hope we'd be willing to listen to that, because frankly it could be a solution for the whole community. People may not like it, they may not want to participate in it, you may ultimately say no, that's facilitating the concurrency requirements and allowing somebody to come in and subdivide this area and develop it more. But frankly, having to truck in water is a problem, you know, that I've only experienced in like remote cabin areas and and so forth. So, I mean, I'm an advocate for protecting the public water systems that have been developed in the county, and I hope we can continue to do that. And if there was a good solution in terms of providing water through a well that produced significant quantities and the building of a tank, that would be certainly something that I would want to look to, and that would help the development of an area, but it would also significantly improve the quality of life for some of the people in the area. So
I agree. I think that's a great comment. Okay. Any other? All right. If not, we'll look for a motion on item number 8.
I will make a motion that we deny the Eggett rezone application number 24.049, changing 21.31 acres from A20 to RR1 to RR5 completely, and amend the future land use map from a split designation of agriculture and rural residential 1 to ranch residential 5 completely, due to the following findings. And those things would be that we have discussed here this evening.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion?
So a question on the motion.
Oh, sorry.
So can you just at least a couple of the specific findings that you're making?
Lack of water would be one of them. Safety for the roads would be another one.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Your second still stands. I guess we're not really changing the motion, just clarifying. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to action item number 9. I'll ask if you are planning on leaving the meeting, if you'll just do so quietly, and thank you. And if you'd like an evening of enjoyment, feel free to stick around. Cindy Mikesell, I'm looking at you. Out the door. She gets enough enjoyment at the county building here. Okay.
So our USIP conference is coming up. They've requested to know who our appointed representative is going to be. I did send this out to all of the elected officials, as it can be any county elected. I heard back only from a very begrudgingly county attorney that should there be no other volunteers, they might be able to make that work. That's all I have. I just need to report to them.
Remind me
and
the date of that.
It is November 22nd.
We had gone and approved
It's right.
a few weeks ago, and I don't know that you
yeah,
were
I thought
here.
we agreed that Matt was gonna
Matt
do it.
was going to do that.
Oh, was that when I wasn't
I
here?
thought that was for USAC, but maybe
No,
it
that's
is
for the
all.
USIP.
SIP, and
So
I'm
who's our
Okay.
alternate?
really glad this is in a public meeting.
We did not.
Agree.
We did not choose an alternate.
Yeah, we
Oh,
didn't
okay.
select.
I had.
Yeah,
I had said
Blaine
I would
had said
do
he
it.
was gonna go as well.
Yeah, that was only if.
I was like, I've literally missed 2
So-
meetings all year. How is this possible?
Why don't we'll just keep Matt as the.
Matt and Blaine is our alternate?
But Blaine's going anyway, he said.
No, I may not be.
Oh, okay. All
I
right.
just have
Could
to
be
put
the
it in
alternate.
resolution
Or
so that I
Garrett.
can submit it to them because they require it by
So you can
resolution.
put.
I'm the
You can
first,
put a.
he's the alternate.
You can put another alternate in there if you'd like.
It's not Blaine. Hold on.
Yeah, we had already agreed on that.
Okay, so Matt Wilson. Oh, why is it doing that? It's doing-
I had agreed to it before it was.
I think that was mischaracterized. I don't think it was begrudgingly. I just said that I could make that work if needed.
That's a great clarification.
Sorry. Adding words.
People
wants
interpret your
that stricken
tone in
from
so
the
many unfavorable ways.
Yeah, I should have.
I think it could help nowadays, I'm telling you. All right, so I'm sorry, who's our alternate? The begrudgingly county attorney or Blaine?
Yes.
Okay.
I can.
Garrett of the Smiths, the honorable.
Yes.
Okay, just kidding. All right. Okay, I will submit that in. So then you're, it's technically, it has to be done by resolution, so resolution 2482.
You want us to vote on that
Yes,
resolution
please.
then? Okay, so we need a motion to approve resolution CR 24-82.
I'll make that motion.
And also-
Second.
Okay, a motion, and we
Go
had
ahead,
2
Blaine,
seconds.
take that.
He could do it.
Sure.
Matt Wilson did.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me finish typing this and I'll pop over mine.
Okay. Kate, I'll take your first one because I'm aware of
Yay!
this one.
I'm
Wasatch
not sad about
Integrated
that.
Waste is having their 40th anniversary this fall. They are doing an open house in conjunction with that on November 15th from noon to 4 p.m. They will have a taco truck there, so if that entices you. And also tours available of the material recovery facility. So if you'd like to see how the recycling materials get sorted and handled, you can go down and check that out.
What time is that at?
It's from noon to 4 p.m.
When is that?
I think I
On
put a
November
flyer
15th.
in the packet. Let me.
It's
Oh,
in
it's
front
on the
of you.
screen. Good grief.
Noon to 4?
Noon to 3,
Noon to 4.
tours are noon to 4.
Say, hopefully we'll be in the state football game for this high school at that point.
That would be awesome.
Is that day?
Normally
Good.
it is that day.
Good.
You good for that? Next one? Okay, so there are UAC dues, were reassessed. They didn't go up too much. Yeah, so they're 30,780. We obviously don't pay this until, the first of the year next year, but I just, so I can budget it. Are we good with that amount?
So any
Okay.
concerns?
And then we had discussed this next one partially at the very, very end of a work session way back in May, but it wasn't an action item. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm completely on the other thing. This is the amicus brief. We had discussed, or you had discussed last meeting, to enter into the amicus brief rather than create our own, correct? I just need to know what fund you want to pay that out of.
What was that dollar amount to?
1,000.
It was at $1,000.
Just
I think just out of
Jeremy, can you go one more
Non-departmental,
page?
right?
Thank you.
I
non-departmental.
thought we got rid of all those.
What?
The non-departmental.
Only you guys
Only
have
we have that.
Oh, we
one.
still have
That's
ours,
our
okay.
that's our piggy bank that we spend out of because we don't want to put everything in.
We don't want to have a category for everything.
Yeah.
Slush fund.
But we,
No,
the
we
problem
don't
is, no,
call
well,
them
not-
slush
The problem is
funds.
we just have such a variety of items that come through
Like
that we
this.
couldn't have anticipated. So
And this
So-
is a new thing. This is not clear back. This was only a month ago.
Right. I was thinking, we had talked about being members of the American Public Lands Council.
Yes, and that one we do every year, and it's coming up in January again.
Okay.
That one is normally 5,000. So this one is to go along with it's with the Utah lands, or not Utah, no, there's two of them.
The American Land.
There's-
That's what I'm
there's
trying
the-
getting mixed up.
there's
So
the
who's
So
the
this,
one that
this is a
the Beaver-
donation to help with the amicus brief.
Yes.
And
And
then
then
the
there's
other
also
one-
is the Utah Public Lands Council.
And that's the one the
That's-
Beaver County Commissioner is over?
No, that's the one that Tammy Pearson from
That's the
Beaver
Beaver-
County, yes.
That's Beaver County,
That's
yeah.
Beaver County's.
Okay.
And then there's the American Lands Council, which is a Utah organization.
Okay.
And that one is 5,000 that comes in January.
But
And the
we
other
didn't
one
agree
comes
on
in-
the Tammy Pearson one?
That's 1,000 that we add, that we put in.
I don't think we put it in the budget.
We need to put it, I think.
What I'm saying.
Yeah,
We
need to
talked about it
either
in a
have
work session, but we never
That's
actioned
right,
it.
we need to have an adjustment.
Okay, so that's,
That's $7,000.
find me which one Tam, it's like, to me, it's just Tammy
Okay,
Pearson.
Tammy's is Utah Public Lands Council.
Thank you. Public Lands Council, and then the 5K is
The American Lands Council.
American Lands Council. Okay, American Lands Council.
And the amicus brief
is gonna come out of
Is
non-departmental.
to help the UAC. get
Okay.
Amicus brief.
And you're good with non-departmental for that one? All right.
Do you want more information on this? Commissioner McConnell did send it to me, I think, last meeting, and I forwarded it to Janet, and we've had a few discussions. I can let you know what we talked about, but we're generally in support.
Sure, that sounds good. Whatever.
So,
I enjoy it.
the idea would be, so just pulling up some land records. The federal government owns just over 27% of the entire United States, but it is disproportionate to the 11 western states, and they own 49.5% of the 11 western states. And so it kind of, throughout the history, there was this idea that under, so the Constitution, Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2 talks about when territories come into the United States, they come on equal footing. However, after the Louisiana Purchase, they stopped, just sending the land to the states. And so then the states had to buy it, and then they would sell it, and that would, I guess, compensate for the Louisiana Purchase. They had that policy for quite a while, but then with the 11 western states, for whatever reason, the federal government continued to maintain the land instead of distribute it. And I think that it would probably go back to, there's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, that talks about how Washington, D.C. is the seat of government for the entire United States, and it should only be 10 by 10 square miles, and that any other federal land has to be used for forts, arsenals, docks, ports, kind of for that foreign commerce and or border protection, national defense, and only with the consent of the states. And so there is somewhat of a constitutional issue as well. And the idea would be to turn the federal government back to the states. And the state did pass, I can't remember what bill it was, but they created the DLM, which is the Division of Land Management, which is basically like the BLM for the state. Janet brought up some good thoughts too, that the way it's done could matter because so coming from Montana and seeing how the BLM works out there, it would disrupt people's ability to hunt, fish, and do some of those things. And so I guess we won't know exactly how it will be managed. This is step one to see if it can come back to the states and then move forward under new management. So that's a little bit of background. And I think generally, though, it would be more in line constitutionally to not have the federal government own land that's not being used for those items that are articulated in the Constitution, especially without consent of the state, which is also a requirement.
Are we the highest public owned by the federal government, state, and the West?
No.
Oh, I thought we were.
But we're pretty high. I think it's maybe 65%, but there's some landlocked that could be up to 80% by, where it's just like you have to go through public lands to get to some of that private land. I don't know which one is the most. I think Nevada is super high. Arizona's, yeah. Yeah, the 11 western states are,
Yes.
Alaska used to be even more, but it used to be the highest, but I don't think it is anymore.
All right,
But about half of all the 11 western states is owned by the federal government.
Google says Nevada.
I see. My gut was right.
Google said Nevada. 80.1%.
Yeah.
We're at 78.
I think we're at 65 to
Let's give
68.
it back. It
somewhere
was
in there.
78 when I went to school.
Google.
Are we asking
I'm
Google?
asking.
Ask Google.
AKA Kate.
How much is Utah?
Ditch of Utah.
How much public
is
land is
federal land? 66.48.
See,
Okay. Decreased.
We are
They must have
fourth
got
in the
rid of
nation.
some.
Okay.
Look at us.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Alrighty, my next one is,
So we are to proceed with that one, right?
Yeah. My next one is on the Young Street Bridge payment per resolution CR 2313. That's coming out of Fund 31. Did you want anything actioned in that, or do you want me to just carry on with the resolution? Do you want me to just submit for payment when we get it? Since it's,
I think we were gonna
Wasn't sure
discuss
what
that in our budget
process.
sessions tomorrow, to finalize that, because I think we were gonna take it out of that that cog.
yeah, it's
one,
the resolution.
Which is the 31 fund, right?
Is it?
It says that the COG has reviewed the county options sales and use tax for transportation and recommends the funds collected by the county be used on behalf of the COG to pay back an amount of up to 1.541297.23 million to the city for the development and construction of Young Street Bridge as outlined in Exhibit A. But my question was,
Didn't have a fund last year. This year we do. I think that's the reason we didn't do it. Because it had just started last
Well,
year.
last year, when we approved this, we'd actually started receiving that fund. So initially, we said on a monthly basis, but it looks like the payment, they just switched it up to where it's not a monthly basis.
they're telling me it's gonna be every December, beginning of December, end of
Yes.
November. So we paid them, in December of last year, 151,792.30. We have 200,000 budgeted for that fund, which is the corridor preservation fund, for this
No,
year.
you can't use it for corridor preservation.
It's not corridor preservation.
That's not the corridor preservation. It's a different fund.
Okay, so that's kind of, that's
So
what
this one
it's,
has to come from that new fund,
The 22.
the 2217 fund.
2217.
Yes, whichever the one that was put into, I don't know what.
Yeah, because we numbered it differently.
Yes, yeah. But the
don't-
2217 is the tax fund. The sales tax item.
So I will do some research and come back next commission meeting to verify.
Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow?
Yeah.
Hey, that's right, we have a meeting tomorrow at 3.
Right.
Okay.
So 2217 is where that one should be coming from.
Correct.
And the 2219 is the other ones.
Correct.
Three.
That seemed to make your day. I could
Four of
tell
us,
by the-
4 of us will be meeting at 3.
If you want to go at 4, I don't care. It
You
just
can come
means
at
we're
4.
gonna go at 10 o'clock.
Come at 4 if you've got it all decided by the time I get.
Hey, if we are done by 4, stoked, but it's gonna be a miracle, yeah. Legislative priorities for public meeting. When do you want me to schedule that in the agenda? I see Carrie's here. You'd probably like to know that too. So Carrie, the plan was to, sorry for the record, Carrie Gibson is our legislative contractor, and he is in the audience. Wanting to set the county's legislative priorities so that when we get to session next year, our legislative consultants have their marching orders. So when did you want me to put that in the agenda?
How heavy is our next meeting agenda?
It's not light, but it's probably equal to today.
I mean,
Now our work session is taken and we have a presentation. Let me
yeah,
just
'cause
pull it
do
up.
we want this, we probably want this to be a work session item.
Correct.
Meeting on the 29th, and just commissioners, as a reminder, we changed the first meeting in November to October 29th because the first meeting in November is on Election Day. Maybe let's do that for our,
I have that wide open for a
okay,
work session.
then let's
Okay,
do that
so
as our work session on
Yes.
the 29th.
That
Carrie,
too.
is that a day
Carrie's
you
here,
can be
she'll make
available,
sure.
the 29th? Okay.
Legislative.
So 4 o'clock on October 29th. Wear your Halloween costume.
You mean 29th,
That would,
not 20. Did you say
29th.
20th?
okay. And
Sorry, we just missed a comment by Chair. He said we're wearing Halloween costumes on the 29th?
Well, Carrie is.
Oh, Carrie is. Okay.
just Carrie.
We weren't supposed to bring that up. He was supposed to be the only one that shows up in the Halloween costume.
I was just wondering why I wore it tonight.
That is his costume. He's wearing a full cap. So just to give you what I have so far for the agenda next week is, or not next week, in 2 weeks. So we do have the BOE final decision will be on the agenda, so we'll be entering into BOE. Our work session is the Utah State Fire Marshal that you requested. The weed abatement district would like to be on there as an action item. We've had some back and forth with Mountain Green Cemetery wants to come. I told them to have an ask, that we don't just have notices to have notices. The purchase of the recycling cans and the passing of the new fee schedule, which we talked about tonight. Is there anything that I'm?
What about the transit? Because we've got to sign that transit agreement.
Oh, the UTA.
UTA. If we
They,
don't do it,
that's right. They were supposed to be on this meeting and they moved.
they're moved
Thank
to
you.
the next one.
We really don't need them to come
Well,
present if we want to just.
I think they want to
It's to,
come.
I think
it's to
they
pay
want
for a ski bus stop in Mountain Green, which
I
we've
think
done
they
for
wanna
several
come.
years from economic development funds, and really we've done it to support Snow Basin as kind of a partnership deal. It's what, $4,000 a year, maybe
Is that what
5,000.
6,800.
Does it come down?
Yeah, it's coming.
Because they take the cost of the route and they divide it by the number of stops, and we just pay for that.
So do
But-
you want me to just ask
They-
them to submit it as an action item by
I-
paper with no
I don't know, is there-
presentation?
I would like,
If
you
they
know,
wanna
after
come.
talking to them, I would like them to come and just ask us for support.
Okay.
And as
So-
an
But
action
Not have
item.
to presentation.
But they don't need
And
a
not
big
a
presentation. I
presentation,
mean, to
but
be
they could
clear, we're
take-
not interested in UTA doing projects up here right now, other transit projects.
However, may I make a suggestion?
You can make a suggestion, but if it's about UTA having other projects up here.
It's a question. It's not a project. It's a question. Because in the future, and I'm just thinking of the Olympics, and that was one of the things that has been brought up, is the Olympics and how we need to start planning. And if we plan on anything, including with the I-84 interchange, we're gonna need to have some potentially more buses. And I think they would like to just talk about that, so.
Great.
My very last thing is I just made a quick list of upcoming events. USAC has not posted yet, but I do know that that venue is pretty small. So anyone that's intending to go, I'd really like to get your room booked now. So if I could get a head count of how many rooms you'd like me to book.
Okay.
So that way
Thought
we
you
aren't,
already asked us this.
how many are actually going, so that I can book the rooms and
You
put them
asked
under your
that,
name.
that's it.
I'm gonna be going.
Matt, I don't listen when you talk. Okay,
I can
Blaine.
I can see that.
Matt and Blaine.
I'm going.
Jared.
I'm going.
Mike.
I'm planning on going as well.
Did USAC add another seat to their could?
Could? What did I? No, Utah State Association
Got
of County
three
Commissioners and Councilmen.
Councilman.
Would have only had 2 seats.
No, 3. 3. That leaves Robert. It was so weird last night when someone called you Bobby. I was like, who the heck? Oh, it's Robert. You're not going? Okay. All right. And are you guys good with me going? Because I was intending to go. Okay. All right. That's all I had. Thank you. Thank you.
You did get me, right?
Yep. I got Matt Blaine, Jared, Mike, Kate, and both of the 2 new commissioners would like to go.
Okay.
I pointed at Josh. Yes. He's like, please no. Okay.
All right, moving on to commissioner comments. Commissioner Anderson.
Just appreciate the quick response on a few items. The Lee's Market and the traffic study and the ped crossing there that our county engineer and Brett jumped on that really quick, so appreciate that. And then just Josh with that ordinance that we discussed tonight. This email's only 2 weeks ago that we had an email discussion with one of the private entities about their franchise agreement. So appreciate Joe's taking the time to work on that and get that up and running. I think that's all I've got. I was just going to send you an email, but just on that, is that fire marshal calculations?
Right.
I think that's just a couple weeks ago, but
Yeah,
be good to
and
just
that'll
see those.
Yeah, that'll be from. I can send you what they sent to me, but I don't think it calculates to the calculation you're looking for. So I'll forward what I have, but I'm asking them to do an actual number, square footage wise.
Excellent. I just have an item just making you aware of. I'll bring this back later. I got a call from a resident that's on Morgan Valley Drive. Was looking at plat maps, and there's this really weird triangle-shaped piece of, I don't know, it's a couple hundred square feet of property that is owned by the county in her front yard. It's not road adjacent, like it makes no sense. I asked Brenda to look into it. She can't tell me why it's there, but it is. So anyway, we need to clean it up. So we'll get some more information on it and bring it back, but just making you aware. I suspect there's probably a few of those. It's in a really random spot for something like that. I mean, there's no intersection. It's
got
really.
a ton of random spots where we need to address.
Well, and the interesting thing is, it was a full triangle, and then the neighboring landowner got it taken care of, and the county deeded that portion back to them. So now there's a smaller triangle in her property. Anyway, it's this little triangle here. Anyway. So just making you aware.
Property taxes.
Yeah, I guess. Yes. Outside of that, I don't have anything else. Commissioner Fackrell.
Yeah, I've got a few things there. Yesterday was the groundbreaking for the property at East Canyon. There's part of the ribbon. Yeah, just part of the ribbon.
Well, you have a piece of the ribbon?
Yeah, I got part of the ribbon right here. And Mike had one. I don't know what he did with it.
It's in my desk at home.
So we had that. Yeah.
It's only that long.
I don't think this will fit.
Not quite.
So it was a good day up there at East Canyon ribbon cutting. I had the chance to talk and share with them the vision of what we had for the property, and there will be some more discussions on the management. They were not aware of some of the visions that had been thought of with that property.
What were our visions?
Some of the visions was. Do you really want to know them all?
No.
Okay, all right.
Top three visions.
Recreation, history,
Trail.
access.
State park and wildlife.
Yeah, I think
There's
one of the
fine.
concerns is that there is some concern that wildlife may try to just make it another WMA.
Mhm.
And I think we need to make sure that access stays open. I would really love to see access for motor vehicles ATVs and such, because we
They
just,
spend part of it.
we lack that so much in the.
Well,
And that's part of the discussion they would like to have.
Yeah, and Commissioner Fackrell, I don't know if you and I were there in that committee session,
Mhm.
and they specifically said for residents' use and trail and ATV, and they
That's right.
included that in their presentation, and that's where we got a third of the money from. So anyway, that's how it's been presented, so I definitely agree. We don't want them to take
With
over
the
the
$8.5 million that the state provided, I think legislators would be in fact, Senator Johnson was there, and he basically says that they would be upset if they did not, if we did not prove to them that we're putting in more than just a WMA, because they will not spend money for the WMA from the taxpayer dollars. And so that is going forward. And then at UAC a couple weeks ago, I forgot to bring these to you, Mike, and the rest of the county. These are the new flags that they...
State flags?
The state flags. One of them is for the ceremonial flag here, and the other one, I don't know which one is which. One's for outside and one's for inside. So...
The frilly one is for inside.
Okay. So we can use them whenever.
So do we need to get another poll?
Might.
We're gonna keep both? We can keep
Well,
both?
right now they haven't done away with the other one. What's that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
do another
right now
poll and
there
do
are.
this up.
So we can use two, so we have to have another poll. And then in some of the planning meetings, the planning commission meeting, one customer brought this up, or one resident brought this up, and I don't know where it stands. Back in 2008, 2009, when we were doing the area plans, there was some discussion about transfer of development rights. I don't know enough about it, but I don't know if we have an ordinance on that. Okay, and do we want one? Maybe it's a discussion for a later date.
It's an interesting discussion. I think that's an hour-long discussion,
Is that a work
Josh.
session?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, I just know that there were some areas when I was working in Summit County that an area had done that, and so they did transfer their rights to somewhere else, and I don't know what happened to those rights, but I know they are staying what they are. So, a rural area. And that's it for today.
Commissioner McConnell.
So just a question, we can talk about this in more detail tomorrow at the budget hearing. They sent along that budget request, it was about 250. Has that already been incorporated on the tourism category
The which one?
from Vista Works?
Oh, yeah, that one, we approved it a few weeks ago, but then it's got to be put into the budget here. I think you did it, Kate. Yeah. Should
It may
there.
be in there. I know just Brian asked me the question if whether it had been passed along, and I wasn't at all of the other budget
Oh, yeah,
hearings.
it's
I
in the
was at some,
budget.
but not
It
all
was
of
in actually the original
Okay.
budget that we sent out.
Okay, great.
Okay, and actually, they've already got all of that, the digital ad, there's a word for it. They've got it all built out and spent. So the UOT grant is pretty much already completed, and we're
that's
ready
right.
to submit our final report, once we get all those invoices.
Great.
And they're doing that report, is that correct? Yeah, okay.
And they also asked about the actual Vista Works contract, renewed contract. Has he called and talked to you about that?
Well, the contract was for several years. What renewal?
Yeah, they're looking for a signed copy of it.
Oh, okay, absolutely. I can get that to them.
Okay. He said something about an 8% increase, but they had agreed not to increase it.
And I made sure to
25.
take that
Yeah,
email and
that's
print it
correct.
out and attach it to our
Okay.
copy of the agreement so that that was in perpetuity.
Okay,
that
great.
email. So Brian needs a copy of the
Yeah,
executed?
he said they had never received the signed copy, and I said, I think we've approved it, so I told him I'd ask.
Okay, I actually have a meeting with him tomorrow, so I will get that done, executed, contract. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Excellent, thank you. Commissioner Wilson.
The only thing, Weaver Human Services, in our meeting, they're shutting down. Well, they haven't made the final decisions yet, but they're closing a lot of senior centers, a couple of them, I should say. funding is just, which is, breaks my heart, because there's a lot of people that depend on that kind of stuff, you know. Blaine's trying to figure out exactly what we pay Weber Human Services a year, because apparently they get money from different sources also besides what we just write them checks for. But they're cutting down on Meals on Wheels. They're just not getting any government funding, federal funding anymore, as far as what they were getting after COVID. And so it's really cramping their style. They're asking that everybody, and I don't know why certain cities don't want to participate in that, even though they're people. But anyway, I just said I'd come back and see if we have anything in any of our funds to help out with some of the other entities, so they don't have to do as much as they're doing, and closing as much as they're closing.
It is interesting because the YCC is experiencing some of the same things. Federal programs are being contracted, state programs are being contracted. Even some of the allocation of state funds last year was just completely odd, by the state agency that was in charge of what was allocated. I don't know. Much money has been infused into the economy, and some of these fundamental programs seem to be struggling. That's odd to me.
Yeah, it's frustrating because I feel like a lot of our monies are going to I'm not being political or racist or anything here, but it's going outside our own individual citizens of the United States of America, and
Special interest groups and such.
and it's getting spent on crazy stuff, and our own people are suffering. It's just frustrating.
I don't know how it affected these particular entities. I know the health departments, and this is something I remember saying early in COVID, that these health departments are going to get very, very fat with money, and they're going to get used to spending, and they're going to have a really hard time cutting back when that money dries up. I suspect we're seeing that with the health department. I don't know how that affects Weber Human Services, but I know that they're tied with the health department. One concern I have with infusing, I'm all for supporting the programs that support our people. One concern I have is, are they continuing to operate programs that are maybe not needed or not as impactful, and shuffling funds there and then coming back to the local entities and saying, we need more money to run these programs that are impactful to your people. So I think if they could show us what they're doing, I would totally support, those programs that help our people, but I hope it's not because they're shifting money to those other programs, and I suspect there's probably at least a small portion of that. I don't know, but
Well, I do know that they're not given, they're not given raises, and they're not given COLAs and stuff like that this year because of all
But if you've hired 10 extra people, I mean, the health department hired, 50 or 60 extra people. Weber Morgan Health Department did. Maybe it was even more than that. It was a tremendous number of people during COVID. I suspect that they're not back down to their pre-COVID numbers, of employees. And if you've got an overabundance of employees because you've started 15 new programs during a time when you had a budget surplus and now your budget's cut down, I feel like they need to cut some of those programs back before they start cutting back, the programs that have been in place for years. I mean, Meals on Wheels is a program that's been in place for forever, right? For as long as I can remember. So it's frustrating, and I'm not saying that is the case, but it appears to me that may be partially the case.
Well, I guess the only reason I said I'd look into it is because they haven't taken anything away from us, and maybe there's a good reason for that. Maybe we're supplying a lot of money.
We're probably more than paying for the services we're getting. And I think that's part of the discussion we probably ought to have with them is, hey, Albany County's infusing
That's what
you know,
I
a quarter of
told
$1 million
Blaine I'd
a
have
year
with
into
them.
this, and the services we're receiving are a fraction of that. I don't know what they are.
There's
More
there's-
now that there's a help department.
There's more to it, and that's part of what I was researching on, is there's certain funding mechanisms that come into that aging, or not just the aging, but into the health department, that are, the Weber County is receiving them directly instead of coming to us, and I think that's
How
something.
does that happen? I don't get that.
I don't know. That's what
Well, I
I've
know
been
some
trying to
have
work
to
on.
be passed through an agency like
Yeah,
that.
but it's had to have gone through. I mean, there's a lot of things that has happened, and I think, as you said, as they get bigger, they're starting to, you know, they got bigger because they had the money. Now they've got to downsize. But the problem is we actually, and this is something I brought up with Matt. In every one of our utility bills, every one of our phone bills, if you take a look at it, there is a portion of your bill that is taxed that goes to a municipality or to a entity. Look at that and determine in that what. Anyway,
How do you know
over
what
a couple $1 million.
municipality it's going to, though?
That's what I don't know. I don't know that yet. I have not got a hold of the person that's over that part of the department because of other reasons. And that'll depend on you guys if you want me to continue researching. So there's the aging, there's actually a grant out there for the aging. We have to be part of a system or part of an agency to do that. But if we create our own, then maybe we can get that funding directly. And so there's things that we can do directly as a county. It's just whether or not we want to do it, and I want to have the facts before I talk too much.
I do too.
Yeah, so when I get that, if I do.
I would certainly say, Matt, if they come and say, hey, we want additional funding, I think we need to have the conversation of, well, where is your funding currently going?
Where's it coming from?
And how are our residents being affected by that funding, you know, because I think that's a worthwhile conversation.
That's it.
Cool. Okay. Sounds great. Thank you all for your time.
Does anyone have any dietary restrictions?
No. For me. Question, are you going to also in that, are you going to register us as a person going? Or
Yep,
do
I'm
you
doing
want
that
us to
right
do-
now. That's why I need to know if you have a dietary restriction.
I usually have sugar-free coconut syrup versus the normal coconut syrup.
Who's doing it? Oh, you mean, for you, Zach?
Yeah.
No beans.
All right. With that,
Are you
I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned.
Yeah.